We'll be starting with the first thing, that is what is special about Grails. We all, being a Java developer, ever thinks that there is only one aspect wherein we cannot beat the .NET guy or a PHP guy, and that exactly is the speed of development, right? With the same concept in mind, the creator of Grails, they came up with the framework which offers rapid application development. As you can see on my screen, there was a presentation done by Jeff Brown, who is a lead architect for the framework Grails, in a conference called Java 1 at California. And the topic for his presentation was build Twitter with Grails in 90 minutes. Yes, it is about building a social web application with Java J2EE in just 90 minutes. So if somebody tells me about this kind of storyline, I won't believe it unless I know the power of Grails. So let us take a look what all is offered by Grails and how it is special to us. Similarly, if I want to create a simple webinar management system having the standard CRUD operations to manage the webinars, the attendees, and the registrations for webinar, this whole application can be created in Grails in 30 minutes of time by a single novice developer. And there would be standard features like security aspects, meaning it is only the administrator who can create the webinar and who can manage the webinar, and unless somebody registered cannot attend the webinar. There would be a full-fledged search feature available for all international audience. There would be support for internationalization. All standard validations would also be applied. For example, if you are going to create a webinar, there should be a proper name of webinar. It cannot be blank. If somebody is trying to register for a webinar, he or she cannot register for a past dated webinar, so on and so forth. Also, if there is a list of attendees available for webinar, it should be paginated. If I am trying to delete a webinar or something, it should provide me a standard confirmation dialog box. The column should be sortable, and so on. So the entire features listed over here can be created by a single developer in 30 minutes. Can you imagine the code size required to build this feature in Java J2EE? I might have Grails, I might have Spring in mind, I might have JSF in mind, I may go for pure JSP, Servlet and JDBC combination, I can go for studs, I can go for anything. I just want to build these features, and if it is Grails, it is just a matter of 45 lines of code, and that is it. This will give me a full-fledged application available in my production in just 30 minutes. So that's amazing, right? So if I look back at my career when I started with, the typical J2EE development looks like time consuming, because we don't have a very foolproof solutions available wherein you can just drag and drop and your things are ready. It's not like that. Even if a framework is rich enough, it requires me a lot of configurations. It is repetitive in nature. As the complexity of application arises, it will also create complexity at the code layer. And even if somehow I can manage all of these tasks, and if I want to have a stable, extensible application, that would be at the cost of long development time. But this is a kind of legacy that we are talking. It's no more because Grails is there. So Grails is staying on 4 pillars. That is rapid in nature. When I say rapid application development environment, it means there is a lot of template driven code available which I can directly integrate. There is a lot of code readily available in the form of plugins which can readily be integrated. For example, if somebody says what is Spring best known for, then it is security, obviously. If I say what is best offered in struts, then the obvious answer would be the internationalization framework and the validation framework. And if somebody says we are using JSF, the core reason for them is the Ajaxing component. So if all of this can be integrated in a single J2EE application framework, then that's wonderful. So all of this thing is available in the form of plugins, and as of now there are 700 plugins available for Grails, and it allows me doing rapid application development. It is dynamic in nature, in the sense it is backed by another JVM driven language called Groovy, and things can be built at runtime, hence it is dynamic. All the errors reported to me would be almost real time along with the line number. So instead of looking at and digging at the stack trace in my console log, I can readily get it on my UI layer. So error reporting is also very clear to me, and the chances for getting that error fixed in development environment is very fast. Also it is robust in nature, in the sense no more lot of configurations are required. It is a philosophy of convention over configuration, so that will reduce the development efforts required in order to have a lot of XML and property driven configurations. If I want to expose a few web services, that is readily available, and for a simple application wherein if I want to have a web client, a mobile client and a desktop client, so I can simply go ahead and create my application in a way that all my business logic is exposed via web service with a single line of code, an annotation, and that will do my job. So it is robust in nature, and being a Java J2EE ecosystem framework, that is obviously an open source, so that's plus for us. So this is how the application can be built over Grails, having rapid, dynamic and robust terminologies. So essentially Grails brings back the enjoyment of Java web development. So these are the building blocks for Grails. It is web MVC to start with. So the controller layer is offered by Spring. We have an expressive view technology called Groovy Server Pages, or GSP. The ORM layer is backed by Hibernate and is known as GOM layer. There is an inbuilt servlet container available. It means you do not need to deploy your application on the web container like WebLogic or Tomcat. You just need to fire a command and that will deploy your application on an inbuilt servlet container known as J2EE. So that will reduce your deployment time when you are in development. It has a tight support available for JUnit test cases and the integration test cases. So it is in line with the rapid application development with agile technology as well. There is an in-memory database available called H2. So you do not need to go ahead and set up your database server in your development environment. That is readily available from within Grails. In case you want to deploy your applications on multiple environments, there is a single file available called build.properties. wherein you can specify the database configuration to be used for your development, for your QA and the production environment. There is a nice support available for internationalization. Again, that is derived from Spring's mature message resource framework. And we being a developer, we are very good at development, but probably we don't like much that is called documentation part. And in order to utilize whatever we have written in the form of developer comments or whatever we have written in the form of Java documentation, with the help of the doc.ng supported by Grails, all of this documentation can be readily exported in the form of PDF or the Word file. So these are the building blocks available for Grails, and as of today the production release for Grails is 2.2.0, which is backed by Groovy as a programming language with version 1.8.x. So let us take a look at the architecture for Grails. You can see that it is mostly using the Java J2EE ecosystem. On the bottom we have a Java virtual machine. So the Java language code driven by Java Development Kit is going to be compiled in .class file and is going to be executed by Java virtual machine. We have the block available for Spring. So almost all the features, all the modules of Spring can readily be used by Grails. All the ORM and DB interaction is taken care by Hibernate, and the view layer and templating is taken care by Sitemesh. And on the top, Grails resides. This is also supported by another language called Groovy, which is again a JVM driven language, which is going to get compiled in .class file. So when you start working on Grails, even if you have a few code available in Java, if you have a few libraries developed already in Java that can readily be used and reused in the Grails project that you create. So Java is essentially Groovy and essentially Groovy is Java 2. So the combination of Java and Groovy will surely do for the Grails project that you build, and eventually once you are more familiar with Groovy, you can convert all Java code to the more advanced version of Java called Groovy. Having said that, let us take a look at a few Grails commands offered by the Grails framework. They are nothing but the simple Ant scripts. For example, if I want to start developing a web application, in our case we had taken an example of webinar management system. So since it is a web application, there should be a predefined structure so that that structure can be understood by my web container. So the skeleton part, creating that skeleton part is offered by a single command in Grails. For example, Grails create app followed by the name of application. So this will create me the skeleton of my application. Then there is another command, that is Grails create domain class. Since it is MVC pattern, it means you are supposed to focus on model, view and controller. But Grails is running on a principle that is called the naked object design pattern. It means you focus only on the model layer or the domain layer. Rest of the pieces are the kind of controlling and the kind of view layers. If you are 100% focused on your domain layer, it will create, the Grails itself will create controller for you. It will also create the view layer for you. And that is what we are calling as scaffolding mechanism. So once you are done with creating domain classes and once you have added all the required properties in that, you can go ahead and create the controller. So Grails create controller followed by the name of controller will create the controller class for the given base name. Even there is a support available that instead of having a plain simple class on Groovy for controller, you can very well create a templated class for the scaffolded controller. So Grails creates scaffold controller followed by the name of controller will create a dynamic scaffolding. We'll just take a look at what do we mean by the static scaffolding and dynamic scaffolding in a couple of slides. Grails also serves the purpose and it motivates us do not writing the code in the controller. What we should be doing is we should be moving away for all our business logic from controller to the service. So Grails very well supports this fundamental and it allows creating the service layer for us. So Grails create service followed by the name of service will create a service command class, and all of these create commands will create associated unit test or integration test so that we can write down the negative and positive scenarios for our business logic. A lot of applications on Java is driven by Maven. So unless Grails is tightly integrated with Maven, a lot of developers will not adopt that. So Grails create form will create a Maven ready application for us and it will convert the Grails application to the Maven application, and later on once it is created, all Maven goals can be executed on the application. Over the period of time, if you feel that there is a lot of code that you have written in your view layer, which is a kind of reusable component, then you can bundle them together and form a tag library. So Grails create tag lib will create a tag library for you, and if I am recalling it correctly, it was really a pain creating a tag library for simple JSP, because you need to write down a lot of stuff, a lot of code for that, and for Grails it is just a matter of couple of lines. Yes, so this is how it is supporting rapid application development. So that is for view layer, and if you feel that there is a possibility that you can create reusable component for yourself, you can make it proprietary or you can donate it for the community. Like we said that Grails is already offering 700 plus plugins. So if I want to do the emailing stuff, I just don't need to write down the whole logic for sending an email along with an attachment. I just need to attach a plugin and that is it. That will do my job. If I want to create the security mechanism, I don't need to write down a lot of code, but I can very well simply integrate this Spring security plugin and that's it. Similarly, if you think that there is a possibility for you to create a plugin, then you can create your own plugin and you can get it integrated with the projects that you are working on. So that gives the reusability as an object-oriented paradigm. Grails also offers generate controller views and generate all. It means writing a single line of code will create all CRUD operations for you at runtime. So if I am firing a command called Grails generate controller on a domain called webinar, then once I am done with creating the controller part and a single line of code, on UI layer I will be able to create a webinar, retrieve the list of webinars, update an existing webinar and delete a particular webinar. So this all feature will be provided to me at runtime. You might be wondering that how is it possible doing all these operations with the single line of code? That's correct. It's only single line of code, and in the background it creates those methods at controller layer and at the ORM layer at runtime. Of course, there is a few performance considerations because the code is not already available at compile level, but it will be generated by the framework at runtime, but it helps. For all our prototyping work, for all our administrative views, this kind of scaffolding can definitely help. It will reduce the development efforts and we can go live in market for the projects and products that we are working on at early stage. A few commands on cleaning, compiling and building the war files. Grails clean will clean up all the compiled resources. So compiled resources for us are the .groovy and .java files. Grails compile is a pre-packaging process and will compile the Groovy and Java sources. Grails war will create a war file which can readily be deployed on J2EE compliant app server. So which should be only used at the time of production, otherwise we should be going for Grails run app if you are just working on your development environment. So Grails run app will run your Grails application in an embedded servlet container called J2EE, and the beauty of Grails is, say you change a few things in your view layer, you just hit refresh on your browser and things will be reflected. You do not need to redeploy your application, you do not need to restart your web server. So that is how it is supporting the rapid application development. Grails test app, it will execute all the unit and integration tests that you have written and will create a beautiful detailed report. If you are aware of a few plugins that you might want to integrate with your application, there is a command called Grails install plugin followed by the name of the plugin, which is available over either SVN repository of Grails or it's there in the form of your file system, or you can very well provide the URL. So these are the elementary commands available in Grails, and of course we being the modern age developer, we cannot afford writing all of the stuff in Notepad and in command line. So the IDE support is already offered by a few tools in market. The open source tools are Groovy Grails Tools Suite, also known as GGTS, which has direct support available for creating and maintaining Groovy and Grails based projects. There is also a tool available from Spring Tools Suite, which is STS, wherein you can install the plugin for Groovy and Grails and it will allow you the development on Grails. There is a paid product available called IntelliJ IDEA. It also allows development on Groovy and Grails, and of course the plain clicks, you can just install the plugin for Groovy and Grails and you can do development on Eclipse. Let us talk a bit on scaffolding. So what do I mean by scaffolding? The general requirement for a web-based application on an entity is to perform the CRUD operation, that is create, retrieve, update and delete. If I have a facility available wherein I can create all these methods with the help of a single line of code, the way it is shown over here, class webinar controller def scaffold equals to true. This is essentially a Groovy code, because otherwise the compiler will complain me that there is no semicolon written over here and def is an undefined stuff for the Java compiler. This is a Groovy code which says that webinar controller is scaffolded and all of this method on CRUD should be created dynamically at runtime. And around which properties? Then it will be talking to the concerned domain class. In our case, it is webinar. So the name of webinar, say the date of publishing, and the maximum number of registrations that can be accepted, and the description, and blah blah blah. So all of this information, once it is populated in the web form, and a save method is called, the Grails is going to create the save for webinar at runtime with the help of reflection. So if we are writing def scaffold equals to true, or def scaffold equals to the name of domain, that is webinar, it will create methods at runtime, and this phenomena is called dynamic scaffolding. We have a few questions available, but I would like to get them answered very shortly. Yes, this would be available in the form of video later on from our website to start with. Similarly, I might be interested in tweaking the code offered by Grails. So in that case, I can go for static scaffolding. So instead of writing def scaffold equals to true, I can use Grails methods like Grails generate all, or generate domain, or generate view, and that will create me controller with the definition for all the methods. Over here it is the attendee for the webinar management system that we are talking. So attendee is a controller, and you can see a list of methods available, say index, list of attendees, create attendee, save attendee, show, edit, update, and delete. And all of this is a controller method, which is a set of steps written to perform that specific action. If I have written a controller like this, then obviously there should be a view layer available to me, so that the screen can be presented to user, and it would look like this. There is a folder called views. Inside that there is attendee, and then there are few GSP files available called create GSP, edit GSP, list GSP, and show GSP. So all of this would be a dedicated file available, and it can be executed at runtime. So attendee is generated with the help of static scaffolding, and hence I can see all of these files available to me. I can go and tweak these files for its templating changes or CSS changes, or even for the business logic. And webinar, again, it's part of view layer, and there is no file available under it. It means all of these files, all of these views will be created at runtime by the framework, because that is the result of dynamic scaffolding. So there is a difference. If I want to tweak the code as per my requirement, I can go for static scaffolding. If I want Grails to create all of this code base for me, I can go for dynamic scaffolding. There should be a requirement wherein, say for example, I have created the domain class for webinar, and then I have realized that okay, I need to add one more property in that, and that is the name of presenter. I missed that initially, and if I change it once I have generated all of the static pages, say if I am changing something on my model layer, that is domain layer, those things will not be reflected in the views that is already created. It will not be refreshed if it is static scaffolding. Yes, if it is dynamic scaffolding, because it is Grails who is creating the stuff at runtime, it will take care of all the changes that I have done in my domain layer. So it is based on the requirement when we should be using static scaffolding, when we should be using dynamic, and when at all we want to go for our own layer of code base. That can be decided. Of course, we can very well tweak these templates which is offered by Grails. You can install the required plugins for that, and you can even change the behavior of scaffolding offered by Grails. Of course, you can very well add a few methods if you want once even your controller is scaffolded, and you can even override the methods offered by dynamic scaffolding or static scaffolding. Having said this, I'll hand over the control to my colleague to have a further discussion on a few very important topics, and handing over to Mr. Twinkle Tucker, who is the senior lead architect in our company. Thank you.
Good afternoon, guys. So moving ahead with this webinar, let us have our next subject as utilizing the Grails configuration. Now with Grails, when we create any application using the command line argument, say Grails create app, Grails generate the application for us with a minimum level of basic configurations where we don't need to provide, or we don't need to have much configurations by ourselves to have a basic level of application running. But for the larger scale of application, we would like to have our own set of configurations, and for this Grails provides a basic set of Groovy scripts using which we can have our own configurations into the application. So there are readily available files which are being provided by Grails for different purposes. One of them is bootstrap.groovy. Now this file has a specific task assigned to him, like suppose if our application requires few things to be set up or few things to be executed at the start of the application or before the shutdown of the application, then those set of instructions can be written into this particular file. In bootstrap.groovy, we have two closures, init and destroy, which are being called upon when the application starts up and shuts down respectively. Now this file can be accessed upon or can be used upon to achieve various purposes for respective applications, like default user creation or mail sendings when application server starts or stops gracefully. Destroy closures would not be called upon if our server gets crashed or stops abnormally. So it is not advisable to rely upon the destroy closure heavily. Another file that we have is datasource.groovy. Using this particular file, we can have different settings related to our data source that our application is going to be tied with. In general, we being a developer have different set of environments across the lifespan of the applications. Like for development, we have the different database. For test and for production, we have another database that we would not be liking to be tampered while testing the applications or while the development type of the applications. For this, we would like to configure 3 different databases for specific environments, and this kind of configurations or say separations of configurations can be achieved by defining the different data sources and respective settings in this particular file. So datasource.groovy, we can say that we can specify the details for the data sources pertaining to the environments. The next category for this configurations series is config.groovy, and this file is the heart of the configurations, where we can specify most of the configurations related to the applications, third-party softwares, and few constants that are going to be used across our applications. Now, say for example, if we want to use log4j plugin into our applications, or say SVN plugin or email plugin, the common settings for this third-party plugins can be managed by specifying them into config.groovy. Along with config.groovy, we have one more file which known as build-config.groovy, where we can mention the settings that are used when running Grails commands such as compile, dock, etc. The difference between these two files are that the config.groovy file is being packaged with the applications, but the build-config.groovy file is not. Another file is URL mappings.groovy. This file is very important because we can specify the navigations and routing for the applications using this particular file. Grails has a specific syntax using which we can have the required navigations or routings mentions for our applications. Okay. The screen right now shows the sample snippets of URL mappings.groovy, where we can have the mappings defined. If you notice, Grails right now provides the default setting as controller/action/id, which means if any URL in this format is being hit for our applications, then that URL will be mapped against the specific controller and specific actions for that particular controller. So the required code base would be executed and user will be redirected to the mention view. If you notice, we have one more mapping with the slash, and it is saying that whenever the application is being hit with the slash in the URL, the user will be redirected to the view known as index.jsp. Over here, no controller will be in action and user will directly be jumped to the index.jsp. The current screen shows the snippet of the data source.groovy, in which we can see that different environments are being specified. One is for development and another is for test. We have two different data sources for respective developments so that we do not tamper with any other database while working on the rest of the environment. In the beginning of this particular file, if we notice, we can find few common properties are mentioned. These common properties will be in effect for all the environments being specified down of the file. Different database related settings like cache or pooled or username or password or URL of this particular database are being mentioned in this file. Okay, that was all about the configurations, and believe me, it is not it is not that hard that we have in struts or JSF or any other J2EE legacy technology. The next thing is to know about meta programming that is being provided by the Groovy and the benefits that we get using the meta programming. Now here is the magic that is achieved on Grails based on Groovy, that we can runtime add methods and properties to any object without even specifying single line of code. We can intercept calls to method invocations and or property access. That is true without a much of code. Now, for example, suppose we have scaffolded our applications and we are having a model known as user with different set of properties. Now, for these properties to be accessed, we don't need to write specific or say explicit getter methods, but these methods are being injected with the help of Groovy, and that saves our lot of time. Also, if we want to query on this particular model based on different set of properties, then also we do have a readily code available and will be accessed without much of trouble. Alright, so based on this discussion and the success stories that we have got, we can see that right now there are many big players that shows interest in Grails, and they have their own sites developed on Grails. Some of them are Atlassian, ESPN, Sky Networks, LinkedIn, Netflix, and Virtual. All these big players are interested in their sites being up to date in terms of managing complexity, having cloud ready applications which are extensible and maintainable, and also performance centric frameworks. So Grails has proven their importance on all of these various aspects, and yes, we can say that it is here to stay for a long. So with this, I would conclude the webinar for discussion, and I would handle the mic to Nirav for having question and answer section.
We would be happy answering your curiosities and queries on Grails, and you can shoot your questions to us and we'll start answering them. When the webinar was in process, there was a concern raised by someone, and he was interested in knowing if we are providing training on Grails. Yes, we are providing the training on Grails, and for that you can contact at sales@signet-infotech.com, or you can write us on inquiry@signet-infotech.com. There is a question available from Javed, and he is interested in knowing that is Liferay internal using Grails to generate dynamic code? So technically the answer is no. The Liferay is in existence well before Grails, and Grails has acquired this concept of scaffolding from the platform called Ruby on Rails. So it is directly compatible with Ruby, but life ray is altogether different thing, and it's not making use of scaffolding mechanism that Grails is using. Thank you. There is a question from Darren. What standard processes have you found most helpful when migrating to Grails and Groovy from JSF? There are a lot of advantages of using Groovy and Grails over JSF. For example, the coupling of view layer to the controller layer offered in JSF. Over here in Grails, there is a lot of flexibility available. For example, if you want to go for the support for ext.js in your view layer, that is readily available. jQuery being the most powerful player on the view technology. So jQuery support is readily available, and starting Grails 2.2, it is already shipped along with the Grails, and it is packaged. You do not need to even install the plugin. Routing in case of JSF is really a painful job. You need to keep on writing a lot of filters. You need to extend the servlet chaining and the filter chaining that is readily offered with the help of Grails. You just put all your required routing mechanism in the form of the regular expressions, and your job is done with the help of URL mappings in the single file. Even templating with JSF is bit painful, and over here under the hood there is a support available from Sitemesh, and you can render the small fragments of your view layers to the Grails view. So in all, the development experience with Grails is much more simpler compared to JSF. Thank you. I hope I answered the concern. John has a concern that is the servlet container a full OSGI container? No, it is a lightweight container because it is J2EE and which runs at a memory space of around 12 to 13 MB. So a lot of aspects of Tomcat has been taken out, but you can very well, if you want to make use of the full-fledged application server or web container, then you can create the var from the code base, like Grails create var for the environment that you are looking for, and then you can deploy that var file on the required app server. So that will do your job. But it is a recommended practice in development that we should be going for J2EE based app container. Thank you. One more concern on the same line of JSF from Darren, more specifically to on what migration paths patterns all at once, one page at a time. In addition, what capabilities are there for accessing the faces servlet from Grails? I would say that even if there is a lot of code created in JSF that can be readily used with Grails. So Grails has a capability that it can make use of the Java layer. Even if it is there in the view layer by facelets, it can be consumed by the view layer of Grails. So I would not suggest migrating the entire application, but we can very well try the migration approach on the basis of modules to modules, identifying a small pieces of view layer, finding them out in the form of templates, and then creating one reusable piece which is rendered on the templates that can be created for the application. So there might be a few templates created out of the application, say for example one for the admin, one for the pre-login pages, and one for post-login. So whatever chunks of reusable code is required, that can be created, and then those all pieces can be migrated from rich faces or faceless to the Grails GSP pages, and we can move on with that approach. That would be pretty simpler approach in my opinion. Thank you. There is also a concern for the Virgo by John. So yes, there is an OSGI plugin for Grails which works as an integration with Virgo. That is, as per my knowledge, that is still there in the development phase, and that should be out to production from Grails plugin SVN shortly. Thank you. We'll be waiting for one more minute for your concerns and queries before we conclude for the day. And all your concerns or questions, if it is not answered, you can get back to us on our website, or and we'll get back to you. I'm just touring you through the slides that we have gone through, so if you have any questions on that, I can answer. One more question from Darren. Do you have experience with a hot deploy? Yes. In development environment, if you are changing the stuff on the view layer or on the Groovy layer, you don't need to redeploy your application, neither you need to start your web server again. But if you are making change in a few configuration files, yes, you require to restart your Grails server or the app server. But in most of the cases, a lot of changes, even if you are doing at the view layer technologies like JS, CSS or GSP, it will simply hot deploy the stuff by a hard refresh on my browser. That's it. And that is really handy, because if you just do a few cosmetic changes and if it requires you to restart your web server, then that's really time consuming process. And in case of Grails, because the GSP files are automatically translated in the JSP driven servlets and followed by the .class file, and that happens at runtime. So hot deployment, especially with J2EE, is very, very quick and powerful. So that's positive for Grails. Thank you. Alright guys, thank you for your time joining us on the webinar, and you can stay tuned for the next series of webinars that we are going to have on Grails. There is a lot of request for the migration from the legacy frameworks or from the non-Java frameworks to Java driven frameworks, and we are going to have a few sessions on that. So you can stay tuned to our website, and the marketing from our end will get back to you in the form of newsletters for all of the upcoming webinars. Thank you very much for your time, and have a nice day.